What's up, guys? It's Bromley. We're at Empire Barbell, and today I want to talk about some talking points in the world of weightlifting that drive me crazy. Today specifically, we're going to talk about flexibility and mobility. In strength training culture, it's pretty common for guys to talk about some topic or some mode of training or some bit of information, and over time as that information gets passed around, basically all the subtlety and nuance just gets sucked right out of it. So every one of you have heard the memes about more than 5 reps being cardio and how horrible it is, and cardio will kill gains, and on and on. And of course that's absolute bullshit, because some of the strongest people on the planet also tend to be NFL players, or also tend to be involved in sports that require something beyond just being able to do something maximally for 4 seconds at a time. So the way that truism gets passed around, and it tends to brand strength sports as being filled with a bunch of lazy fat shit meatheads. I'm not saying that it is, but I'm not saying that it's not. Similarly, we find people taking small bits of truth from old studies or from some source that they read and taking it and blowing it up and over relying on that as a justification for not doing hard shit that they don't want to do. People don't do cardio because it sucks. Another thing that sucks that is vital to your success is stretching. So when you see a study that says, okay, if you do long stretches before you lift, it's going to make you weaker. The general gym culture at large tends to take that as stretching is bad, you don't need to stretch. There's no reason that any one of you should actually try to avoid maintaining good joint health. To be flexible, to be able to go through a full range of motion, it means that you can do more shit. It means that you will stay closer to being reasonably useful as a human being, which might be important to some of you. But even if not, it's going to mean that you stay healthier, that you're not as likely to develop huge imbalances, develop overuse issues, and it's going to mean that you're not going to face a devastating tear that seemingly comes out of nowhere. When you think of Olympic lifters, you think of very aggressive, violent, explosive movements. You have guys, not just some guys, you have many guys throughout history have clean and jerked upwards of 550 pounds. You're talking about yanking into a barbell off the ground, violently reversing directions, and letting that barbell fall on your collarbone in a front rack position, and then getting up and jerking underneath it. Why don't Olympic lifters seem to have the level of injuries that powerlifters do? I can't think of a modern top-level heavyweight powerlifter or strongman who hasn't at some point been plagued with hamstring tears, quad tears, lower back problems, shoulder or hip problems, knee problems, etc. Olympic lifters just seem to last longer. Now, I believe there's some data. I'm going to see if I can dig that up. I believe there's some data to corroborate that, but right now I'm going off a sense of the sport. The obvious answer just seems to be that they're much more mobile. When they squat to complete depth. They don't have their hips tight so that they prop up this artificial amount of force to pop them up out of the hole. They have to hit rock bottom where the muscles are fully elongated. Every time they catch a clean or a snatch, they're reinforcing good shoulder mobility. They're getting their shoulders to move through a full range of motion. So that flexibility is very vital to staying in a proper position as the loads get increasingly heavier, which is going to decrease your rate of injury. So bottom line, stretching is good. If you are avoiding stretching because you're worried that a couple minutes of extended stretching is going to kill your gains, that means you weren't a very good lifter to begin with, and you're probably not going to be in the future. Now, if it's heavy squat day, do I recommend doing a 5-minute long deep stretch before you squat? Maybe not, but there's no reason you can't do it the night after, and that you can't do it several times throughout the week after that. Also, if you're going in for a light day, a speed day, a recovery day, again, there's absolutely no reason that you cannot start your training off with deep stretching and then use all of the other movements you do as a way to reinforce that positioning. That's going to give you the best end result. If you have really shitty flexibility, it's just a matter of time before you have something that sets you back, and it's just a coin flip as to whether or not the thing that sets you back is going to be career ending or not. So keep that in mind. There's no reason to be broken and beaten down to do this stuff. This stuff should augment your life, not make it worse. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to execute a 5-minute squat stretch challenge. I first came across this, I think through Zach Tellender, who executed it. And this is something I've been doing a few times throughout the week to try and increase hip mobility. I have been squatting since I was 13. I've never had problems with mobility until I broke my ankle about 5 or 6 years ago. And then I found, you can even see right now, my heel pops up off the ground if I don't have a shoe on. So what I found is as this tension built up from that injury over the last 5 or 6 years, my hips got so bound that I had trouble getting below parallel, which is something I've never had trouble with. And I would always feel like I dunked it. That's as low as I could physically go, even if I just sank all the way to the bottom. But looking at video, I was always just right at, if not like an inch below parallel. So what I realized after doing something like this is that I'm just tight. It's that I never do anything anymore that puts my glutes, my hamstrings through a full range of motion. So I have lost the ability to get into a good squat position. So when I saw this, and you know that I knew going into this that the type of stretching you do to increase flexibility and mobility has to go on for a minute plus, ideally for 2 to 3 minutes. So the 5-minute squat challenge was sit into a squat, hold it for 5 minutes, maintain posture. You can sit upright, but that's harder to do. You can have some thoracic extension, but not lumbar. Right now my lumbar spine's set. And actually, I tend to focus on trying to keep my knees back, so I'm putting it more in my hamstrings and hips, and that's where I feel everything open up. And even though it burns and it's kind of uncomfortable, as time goes on, I feel that I get a little lower. I'm getting a little deeper in angle. As I look in the mirror, I can see my hips are much lower, but below my knee, much further below my knee than they typically are. So I could feel it working and opening myself up. So this created kind of an epiphany that the little bit of dynamic stretching that gets repeated so routinely, that's great to get you moving a little bit before a big lift, a big attempt. It is not enough to get you loosened up, especially considering most of the people that watch this do not have enough flexibility, cannot really force themselves into good positions reliably under a load. There's this idea, and I've heard this repeated, that people should only stretch if they need to, and that stretching is kind of over-recommended. I think it's the opposite. I think that everybody should do active work to find what the minimum amount of range they need to keep is, and they should do that regularly. It should be a staple. You shouldn't have to wait until you experience dysfunction before you start incorporating the type of things you need to maintain good movement patterns. If you do that, you're gonna be spending most of your time catching up, and you're probably gonna be like injured or dealing with some overuse issue before the light goes off that this is something that you need to do. So all the injuries I've had, all the problems I've had, I mean, my shoulder issues, my overhead got very strong very quick. My shoulder issues were from not having well-rounded shoulders and having very tight shoulders. I have a hard time holding a rack position overhead. My lower back issues have come from having very weak hamstrings, my lower back issues have come from, having very tight hamstrings and tight hips. Not being able to brace adequately. So not only was my spine in a bad position, but I was weak in that position. So as I've gotten more mature, and as I've started to kind of tack up all my wins and losses, I've realized that any little bit of work I do on a regular basis to keep myself feeling good and moving through some minimum standard has gone just this huge way as far as making sure that I can keep doing this longer. I used to have trouble getting to the bar on a deadlift and feeling like I was in a strong position. I mean, I used to have to play this game where I'd get into the bar and kind of wiggle myself around and brace my abs. And I always felt like my spine was out of position. And after doing this for a couple of weeks, getting to the bar felt like I was doing a rack pull. I felt not only like I got to the bar easier, but I felt like I was actually in an advantage position. It was beautiful. And my strength, here's the big shocker, guys, my strength hasn't declined. I'm not less explosive off the ground. So everything I said about building mechanical tension, you shouldn't be afraid of losing mechanical tension because that's not going to be the thing that develops you further. You need contractile strength. And you need to be able to get in a good enough position that you're efficient when you lift, that you're going to be injury proof, and that you are going to be able to develop yourself the way you need to develop yourself. So all of the boundness that you feel might not be the thing that you need if you want to take it to the next level. Sometimes you got to take a few steps back to go forward. Anyways, there's no goddamn excuse that any single one of you are not stretching sometime throughout the week on a regular basis. I'm doing this for the squat. We're coming up on 5 minutes. I'm going to take it longer because I have more things to say. I'm doing this for the squat. I also started doing it with a toe touch, practicing, putting my hands on a chair and having my knees locked and getting lower and lower over 5 minutes. And I found that that has done wonders for my hamstring flexibility, even though all these idiots say that, it's a lower back stretch, you shouldn't do toe touches, there's all these weird conformations of stretches. Don't fucking complicate it. You need to get yourself in more increasingly deep ranges of motion. It doesn't matter how you do it. A toe touch is the easiest way to put tension on your hamstrings. It's not gonna injure your back. You just have to be controlled, make sure you're bracing, and again, make yourself hold it. Make yourself do it for an extended period of time. Don't do it for 30 seconds and say, ow, that hurts. The further and longer you push it, the more it releases and you start to feel better. You should be able to do it for your shoulders and your lats. There's a couple other variations you could do for that. Hold it several minutes. If you can't do 5 minutes, do 3 minutes. If you can't do 3, do 1 and try to do 3 next time. This should be progressed just like everything else. You don't need to be a contortionist. You just need to be able to handle like the bare minimum viable positioning to be a good lifter. And many of you can't do that. So don't ignore it. Don't pretend like it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. All right, we're at 6 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and stand up. Oh, Jesus. So already right now, where I couldn't get my heel on the ground, I can hit ass to grass. That's about as low as I can get. My heel stays on the ground, no problem. I can actually already feel that I'm not getting the butt wink that I normally get when I squat. So if I start with my hips tight and I'm braced, I feel like I can actually get a lot lower with my my hips, my pelvis in the normal position. So that's what I'll do before a light lower body workout. I'll even do it before a speed deadlift workout because I don't give a shit about maximal tension. The mechanical tension I'm getting is just going to interfere with the positioning I'm trying to force myself into. And that's so that I can be healthy and I can be a useful human being, so I can be doing this for a long time. So stop talking yourself out of doing hard shit. You need to stretch. God damn it, you need to do cardio too. I'll talk about that later. See, I'm already out of breath from that. Anyways, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about this. Questions in the comment box. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, Bromley from Empire Barbell. I'll see you.